Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to Trail Society, produced by our friends over at Feisty Media. I'm your host, Corrine Malcolm, and today's episode would not be possible without our incredible support system behind the scenes at Feisty. Thank you to the amazing women who keep this show moving like a well-oiled machine, editing, sourcing, keeping us afloat on social media. They are truly a dream team. So please, go give them a follow over on Instagram at feisty_media and check out the website for more information on other Feisty podcasts. You'll find that over at feisty.co. Today on the podcast, we have the incredibly rad and now 3-time Paralympian Dani Aravich. I first got connected with Dani through mutual trail running friends, and I've been a fan ever since. Dani was born missing her left hand and lower arm, but it wasn't until she had already run Division I track and field and gotten a job in marketing in professional sports, like big league professional sports, that she was introduced to the Paralympic movement. That discovery in 2019 changed everything. Dani is well known now as a disability rights activist and a communications specialist. She now uses that professional platform to elevate and equalize content coverage and public discourse around disabled athletes and parasports. She's the co-founder of Cultured, a media company whose mission is to change the narrative around para-athletes through creative storytelling and visibility. And if you're on Threads or Instagram or any social media platform, you've probably seen Dani or Cultured sending out the good word that the Paralympics is coming up and that you should be tuning in because these athletes are incredible, competing at the very highest level. So that being said, I think it's March 10th if you're listening to this, which means we're in the midst of the Paralympics. So if you have not yet, you're going to go tonight. You're going to tune in to wherever the Olympics are streaming for you, and you are going to watch Dani and her fellow Paralympians compete for those medals. But for now, let's get to know Dani Aravich and her mission to medal in the sports of parabiathlon and para-cross-country skiing. Yay, Dani Aravich, welcome to the pod.
I'm so honored to be on here talking about Paralympic sport on a trail running podcast.
I think this is going to drop during the Paralympics, so legit could not be more excited.
Yay.
Unless, I don't know, the Paralympics comes for us and embargoes any of your voice or something, but until then.
Those rules. Rule 40 starts Friday. I do know that. So that's one I'm keeping in my front of my mind. But yeah, I saw an Olympic athlete say all her content she posted during the games got flagged by the IOC. I don't know what she was posting, and they took down her Instagram that had like 50,000 followers. So I'm like, I should read up on the rules again.
I should make sure I know exactly what's going on. For those who don't know, Rule 40 is basically like a sponsorship blackout during the Olympic and Paralympic period, in which non-Olympic sponsors aren't supposed to be on the side of things. And therefore, we get to see athletes do really cool things like take off their shoes and hold them by their faces and try to give very natural spawn con during the Olympics. But before we get too far down this rabbit hole, which I am excited to explore with you, I've been using the same opening question for everyone this year, and it is simply, what is something you wish people knew about you? I'll go first. I really enjoy being bad at something, specifically like a new sport, especially a skill-based sport, which is why I've ended up doing things like biathlon, cyclocross, log rolling, rock climbing. It just like scratches this like brain itch that I have, and I can't stop.
Oh my, wait, that's like, I feel like sums up my Paralympic career is being bad at something. That's like, I don't know if this is getting ahead of myself, but if I got like it pulled for an interview after a competition at these games, I have like a few different things that I feel like would be my driving home message. And one of them is that I literally wrote down, be brave enough to be bad at something, and you're going to have to be bad at something to get good at something. So I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh. Something I wish people knew about me. I wish people knew that I hate, wait, maybe I don't want people to know this. I don't know why my head went here. That I hate training.
But you train so much.
I train so much, but I hate training. I just want to race. I like to race, but I hate the training aspect of it. And I think people assume that because you're an athlete who does this full time, that you like live and breathe and love this lifestyle. But that's true for some and not everyone. And so just like anyone else, I have to drag myself through most workouts and like really hype myself up to go do something. And some days I don't end up doing it. like there is a portion of that occurs too. So no matter how elite or professional sport athlete you are, you might, you have those days you don't want to do anything either.
I like that you're like, you might have a day here or there where you just like hate sport and you're like, that's me 90% of the time, but
Literally,
here I am.
literally, third Paralympics, still hate training.
You know, I am so proud of you for not just living the fondue lifestyle and getting after it. And Nick,
Do.
your coach, who I know well, I'm sure is also very happy that you do also get out and train. I was thinking about this earlier. Some people may know you as the biathlon bandit. Some people know you as a 2-time Paralympian, soon to be 3-time Paralympian. But I know you as the busiest woman in social media. And I want to know if there's any guesses as to why that might be, besides my algorithm being like more Dani. We need more Dani now.
It knows.
But like, why are you the busiest woman in social media?
Well, I think maybe it comes off that way because for a long time I've worked in social media. So I was logged into like 12 accounts, at periods of a time. And then as an individual athlete who's trying to create a brand, I'm also posting on social media. So I feel like I'm bouncing between accounts and my own. And now with the Paralympics coming up, I feel like it's my mission in life to remind everyone that the Paralympics are coming up. So right now, particularly, I'm on Threads and everyone's posting, I'm so sad the Olympics are over. What am I supposed to do now? Post-Olympic blues. And I'm just in there basically being a bot saying, watch the Paralympics, watch the Paralympics, watch the Paralympics. And I don't know, I have sometimes a up and down relationship with social media. I think because I work in it too and have for a while. And so I backed off some of my work stuff for these few months leading into the games because I do feel like it was taken away from me as a person showing up on social media and wanting to talk about parasport, talk about the Paralympics, work on our media company Cultured, which focuses on telling para stories. And I'm viewing social right now as a very exciting place, like because I think people are taking notice that the games are coming up. And I have just felt very invigorated from it. And sometimes I feel very the opposite and very sad by it and depressed. But I think the Olympic and Paralympic content has made it overall a happier place to exist in social media. But I'm sure as soon as the games are over, maybe I'll dip down and be like, I can't look at this for a while. I don't want to do this. I don't want to work in this. And I think as my career shifts to professionally, hopefully I'll no longer be in the weeds of accounts. Like I was really like doing a lot for my different freelance contracts in the weeds doing stuff.
Like Team USA.
Team USA.
Like you've been in it.
Yeah, I was in it during the Paris Games. I started working for Team USA right after Beijing, so did a lot of the trials leading into Paris, did a lot in this build up to the Milano Cortina Games. And so I'm hoping whatever role I move into professionally next, I'll be a bit more removed from being in the accounts and can think like higher level strategy of content.
You're like, I will have minions in the accounts
Please.
and I do not have to be. But I will say you are creating sleeper agents because now whenever anyone on social media or in my real life says, I'm so sad that the Olympics are over, I sit up and I'm like, but did you know that the Paralympics start on March 6th?
Oh, well, thank you for being my minion.
I am unstoppable in that regard.
Thank you.
I cannot stop just diving back into it. But I do want to step back for a second before we really dive into the Paralympics that are imminently starting, to focus a little bit on your background in sport. That being what is your relationship to sport been through youth athletics, a career in big corporate professional sport, and now obviously gearing up for your third Paralympics?
I loved sports from my early age. I was definitely playing most the typical youth ball sports, like the soccer, basketball, softball. And I really loved those. And my parents really loved sports too. And it was a really good place for us to bond and connect. I think especially me and my dad, because I'm their only child. I really feel like my dad would have loved to have a son to play football and baseball and basketball with. And so I filled somewhat that void for him. And I just loved ball sports, but I always was having to figure out a way to adapt them in a certain sense because I was born missing my hand. Like in basketball, I'd have to develop different types of moves I could do to get around people. In softball, I would catch with my right hand, take off the mitt, then throw it. And I ultimately found cross country running in high school, in the latter half of high school. And it was a crazy concept to think about. The sport was every other sport's punishment. Like in soccer, you don't do well, you run the lap, or basketball, you run the mile or the beep test in school. Like running was always the punishment for everyone else's sport. So the whole concept of doing it as the sole sport was odd to me, but I did it. And I think because I didn't ever, when I started, have strategy or thought really behind how I race, I just kind of ran and it went well enough. Like I made varsity. I ended up then doing track and field, and I started getting recruiting letters from like mostly Division 2 and 3 schools that summer after junior year. And I never really had a thought that I'd be able to play a collegiate sport. And so I got kind of obsessed then with that idea of playing college sport, because I feel like I was always proving myself to my peers. Like in my own head, I was saying, despite missing my hand, like I can hang with you, which now I realize how harmful that narrative was to tell myself, but that's how I felt. So this glorious idea of being a college athlete was really shiny to me, and ended up tailoring where I went to college. And I went to Butler University in Indianapolis to run Division I cross country and track. And when I arrived there, I was like, oh my gosh, my high school running experience was very different from what this is. Like collegiate running now is so professionalized. It takes so much time, like compared to some other sports, because you have 3 seasons. You go right from cross into indoor into outdoor. And these people, are running, some of them with the pros, and it's challenging. It was like a level of expectation that I was not mature enough to handle. And so I was definitely that person who, I hurt myself early on in my career. I had my first patella dislocation, which is an ongoing issue to this day. But even after that one, I was kind of always hoping to be injured, because it's almost like I wanted the clout of being the athlete, but like I physically and mentally couldn't handle being a college athlete. And so I decided to step back from running. I almost transferred universities, but I don't know why. Something like kept me staying there, even though everything else about the university didn't fit what I ever wanted. I was very distracted by this thing of being a runner here. And I ended up staying though, and I started to get like my professional experience more on the business side. So I started interning like for the NFL team in town, the NBA team, and that really helped me then ultimately get my first out of college job, which was with the Utah Jazz. And I moved out to Salt Lake and started kind of working, because I thought that was the path, I was supposed to do. You go to college, I get my business degree, I start working, and then I worked for the next 40 years. And I was doing quite well at my job. It was something that I now see like in sports as an athlete that I can relate to a lot. I started in sales, which is a very difficult, but some people shine in it. Some people start in it with the goal of moving out of it as quickly as possible. So I started in sales and was doing well. I was only one of 2 female sellers out of 60 people at our organization who were selling corporate partnerships and ticketing. So it was very male dominated, but I was still excelling. But I just wasn't as happy as you'd hope for finally having your career starting on a path that seemingly had a good trajectory. And I started doing some Googling searches of the Paralympics because I'd heard about it. I reached out to someone back in Boise, where I grew up, whose daughter I had heard had started running Paralympic track and field. And I was looking through all these documents and asked her questions and like, how does this all work? And found out like there is a category for me. And this was in 2019, like the Tokyo Paralympic trials would be in the summer of 2020. And I was looking at the classifications and the sheet, and I was like, I wonder if I could qualify for the trials. And so I started training on the side of working, unfortunately in an event that was not my preferred event that I had been running in college and in high school because of classifications. Actually, most Paralympic track events, there's very few distance events. Like there are distance events at the Paralympic Games are really, there's like 1 or 2 1,500 meters for the visually impaired class. Most of the distance events though do belong to the wheelchair class. So my classification didn't have any of the long distance events. So I was trying to train for a 400, which I, as a distance runner, you've like done 400 repeats and you like ran the open 4x4.
400 is too short.
Yeah. You run the open 4x4 as like the funny distance girls like at the end of the meet. But it was so different. But it was a new challenge. And I didn't have the best relationship with exercise or training because I hate training and I don't feel the need to move my body for joy or health. And so I wasn't training or exercising at all while I was working. Besides, maybe I'd like take a hike on the weekends with some friends. And so it was nice to have something to train for. And then it all kind of spiraled from starting to pick up the 400 into what now 6 years later.
Yeah, you found some new sports to be bad at and to work at, and we'll get there. But I'm really curious. I actually didn't know that about your story until recently. That it was like I wonder where Dani was introduced to the Paralympic movement because we actually never overlapped, but we know a lot of the same people. I was on the U.S. women's biathlon team. I knew a lot of the paracycling, para skiing, para biathlon team from that genre, like the 2014. A lot of those athletes all competed in 2018 as well, but we never overlapped at all. And so I'm curious, as someone who grew up competing alongside non-disabled athletes, like you played on your high school teams, you're like, I can figure out how to catch and throw in softball despite having a limb discrepancy on one arm. I guess as you heard more about the Paralympic movement and the system, I'm wondering how that shaped your relationship with your own body and just like the understanding of disability or like your personal relationship with disability.
Growing up, it was never a term that was used, mostly because we didn't really have a connection to the community and weren't surrounded by other people with disabilities. So it was never really a term that my family used or that we identified with. And I think it really was high school where I came to terms with like, this is the reality. That in most of middle school and elementary school, I'd wear a cosmetic prosthetic, which for anyone who doesn't know, cosmetic basically means its sole function is to look real. Like it doesn't have any mechanical purpose. It doesn't open or close or grab things. Like it's not electric. It just literally sits there like this. And it was so heavy and bulky. And I wanted to make sure no one could see like the part where it connected to my arm. So I'd wear like a long sleeve shirt in the summer just to try to cover that up. But I think sports was like the one place where I couldn't hide it. Like I wasn't allowed to, I didn't wear my prosthetic. It didn't have any use. I had to wear a short sleeve jersey. I like wasn't able to cover up maybe how I did walking around the rest of the world during the day. And that was something I really loved about sports. And throughout kind of competing against people, it was always like, it was a good test because it was like, if I have a disadvantage here, but I'm still able to excel, that good on me. And so when I discovered parasport and then I started doing that research and ultimately like went to my first Paralympic track and field meet, it's kind of this shell shock moment where you're like, there's people out there like me, like they also are missing their hand, or they, also go around this world like this. And like, now we race each other. And like, this is fair because you're so used to not ever experiencing that. And I think especially in Paralympic track and field, actually, it's an interesting space because they find a lot of like pretty elite level athletes who don't know about the Paralympics and have some sort of impairment and just have like compensated their entire lives. And it's something that I think is really unique about track is a lot of people enter the space from different worlds. Like some come from college running D1 and then others like grew up doing adaptive sports. So it's kind of an interesting space, but it was something that when I started to train and way before I ever like got to wear USA or competed internationally in either track and field or skiing, I said to myself, well, if I get to do this, I'm not just going to do it for myself. Like I feel like now I kind of found my community purpose because community service and all of that was definitely ingrained in me from a young age. But I kind of like I guess, bounced around with my places I'd volunteer and stuff I would do. And so it kind of felt like this maybe was a calling too, in that sense, is to advocate and get involved with nonprofits or organizations. And so very early on in my starting to train for track, I heard about this organization called Nubability, which does sports camps for amputees, but the whole premise is it's taught by amputees. So you get to actually be taught by someone who looks like you, focus on amputees and limb different individuals. And it was a downhill ski camp actually in my hometown of Boise. And so I went, and that was definitely one of the first times I like walked into a room full of people with limb differences or who were amputees. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even know like some of this existed. Like I've never been exposed to this, even though I technically belong here. I've never been exposed to it or spent time in it. So definitely a shocking moment, and kind of a moment where you're like, do I belong here? Because I'm so used to being surrounded by people who don't have disabilities. And now I'm thrown into this, like, is this where I belong? And so it did take some time for me to like kind of dip my toe in and like understand and see. And then over time, I realized like I can exist in both spaces. Like I can see my friends who don't have disabilities and have plenty to relate on, but then I can meet with this person who has a different disability than me and like connect over that community. And you can exist in these multiple communities. You don't have to be siloed into one.
And then I feel like it's like, I'm loving this of like evolution of you. And I never got to know 2018 Dani. I've only known more recent Dani than that. And it's kind of crazy for me to like reflect on like you not owning the space that you're in that way, because in my mind you own it so thoroughly now. And then it's even crazier the fact that you're like, okay, Paralympic track, I'm going to do this. I'm training for the 400. You make the team for Tokyo.
Don't know how.
And then it's like, and then you're introduced to para skiing and biathlon, not by accident, but like kind of by accident. They're like, hey, you should like come. Beth Ann, we love you. Beth Ann Chamberlain. I raced with her on Maine Winter Sports Center way back in the day. God bless those people that are like, we're going to send out a bajillion emails and get all these people.
She finds people. She's our most tenured employee staff member of US Nordic. She started in 2014, I think, as a massage therapist with the team. Yep. But then when she started doing development, she's so good at looking at summer para athletes and inviting them to camps and clinics and stuff. Like the best people on our team, I don't mean myself, like Kendall Gretsch, Oksana Masters, Aaron Pike, like all of them got an email from Beth Ann. Yeah. Crazy.
Recruited from Beth Ann. So they're like, here, look, skiing.
You used to run distances.
Like you can, it's an endurance sport. Like
no one
I don't know,
warned
something
me
fun.
though how freaking technical and hard cross country skiing is. I thought it was just like, oh, you tromp around on skis, and if you're a good runner, you'll be a good Nordic skier. No, no, they lie.
Hard. It's so hard. I have returned to cross country skiing after many years kind of away from the sport recently, and the first day out was like my husband was laughing at me because I was like, all my layers were wrong, and I like had 3 things tied around my waist, and I had gloves stuffed into a waistband, and I was like, this is so hard. And I used to do this like 1,000 hours
a year.
Like this is crazy. But I guess we talked earlier about like doing sports that maybe we're bad at and like just having to try this thing. So you go from like qualifying for Tokyo to that backing up all of a sudden to a winter games due to the delay, due to Tokyo being delayed a year. So all of a sudden you're a summer Paralympian, and you're now a winter Paralympian.
With not enough
in a sport
skiing years under my belt to do so.
Yeah, with a sport that you're just introduced to. So how did you navigate going all in on a sport that you were such a novice in, and now you're like, okay, I am going to become elite at this thing? Like, how do you navigate taking that leap into such a huge unknown? Running was familiar. You grew up with it. You did it in college.
The track and field meets are still track and field meets, even if they're para.
This is a new sport, a completely out of your element. there's a lot of like there's skill involved. Biathlon's going to get added to this mix all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
So skiing and like just like I don't know, calm down and shoot some targets while you're at it. Like how like just walk us through making that leap to skiing and biathlon from the Paralympic side.
When I tried it at this camp in late 2019, early 2020, I thought I was just accepting a free trip to Colorado for a couple days and that I would go and I'd do it and whatever. I'd move back or go back, train for track. But there was something so addicting about being bad at it. And it does fill an endurance hole in your heart. It definitely strikes that same chord. And it was so frustrating being so bad that then I had to leave and figure out how not to be bad while also keeping my focus on the 400. So I ended up moving up to Bozeman, Montana from Salt Lake for the sole purpose of training with the national para cross country and biathlon teams. And it's while I was there, it was the spring of 21, so right before Tokyo trials, they ended up going to a World Cup. And based on some just local racing I had done, they said I qualified. I hadn't been to Europe in years since I studied abroad. I was just so underprepared to race internationally, and something I've been doing just about a year, but not even full time in that year because I was running track most of the time and then occasionally grabbing a pair of skis and trying to flop around and figure it out. And it was in that first race. The Ukrainian team is one of the best para cross country ski teams in the world, and they have a lot of very strong women in my field in particular. And it was in the first, like, I think it was a 5K skate race. I totally crash on the first corner because I don't know how to like step around corners at this point. And I end up falling, and the girl had already caught up to me, and the intervals start 30 seconds behind, and she wasn't able to see me in time. So she crashes over me. And I remember the Ukrainian head coach said to our director at the time, Eileen Carey, he said, "Oh, this is so cute. You, like, in broken English, you have a beginner's lesson going on here." And it fired up Eileen, and it kind of fired up me. And I was like, Eileen, I don't think I can ever beat them, though. Like, look how good they are. They've been medalists since 2014. They medaled in 2018, and now they're probably going to medal in 2022. Like, and she's like, you have to learn how to ski. And it sucks, but it's going to take 6 to 8 years to feel like you really learn technique. And I was like, 6 to 8 years? We have less than a year to Beijing. Like, how is this going to happen? She's like, you're not going to do well in Beijing. Like, that's the hard reality. You might not even qualify. But if you want to, you can learn how to ski. And so over that next year, you go from track right into skiing. You don't get a full training cycle like you should for skiing. Skiing requires cross-country skiing so much volume, like absurd amounts of volume, 500, 600 hours to begin. And then you just keep building on top of that higher and higher in your volume. And when I showed up in Beijing, like, I didn't appreciate it then. And now I am appreciating it, how wonderful it is for no one to give a shit about you. Like, when pressure is suddenly applied to you from outside sources, that's when things I feel like can start to crack, and people either are able to handle it or it can overwhelm them, which is a human normal reaction. We've seen that at the Olympics. Like, some of these people, all of the media put pressure on, all of the sponsors, like, they end up absolutely having a horrible time handling it and not living up to, quote unquote, their potential that other people placed on them. And so I didn't appreciate, no one really cares how I do here. Like, I shouldn't even be here. And so it kind of allowed for me to just ski. And I ended up, my best race was 8th in the skate sprint. And it's actually the race that got me on the national team then. And I just remember being so sad I didn't make the final. And my coach, Nick, was like, you just made it to the semis. Like, you were ranked second to last in this field, and you made it to the semis at the Paralympic Games with less than 2 years of skiing. Think about what you'll do with more years of skiing. And after Beijing, I had to have that hard conversation of, would I continue with track and field? I actually was considering adding triathlon on to try to go to Paris, which was a little bit of a wild idea now that I reflect back. And Eileen said to me, do you want to keep just qualifying for games, or like, would you like to have a medal at games? Because if you give us 4 years, we are going to do our best to make you a medal contender. And if you give us 8 years, we can definitely try to make you a medal contender. And so I decided to stop running track and, take a gamble on a sport that I truthfully didn't know if I'd be good at once I learned. And learning something as technical as cross-country skiing in your mid-20s is very challenging. Like, I feel like people watch it on TV and they're like, oh, okay, 2 sticks on your feet. Like, I've, snowshoed or I've alpine skied. Like, freaking try cross-country skiing. It is a different beast, a different animal. And it's so challenging and hard and frustrating. But then you have a couple glorious moments, kind of like when you get a runner's high where you're like, I'm doing this well. I'm gliding. Like, I have glide and I can figure this out. And so these past 4 years have been trying to figure out cross-country skiing. And, I've been very blessed, though. I got to find a way to kind of scratch my running itch still in a different capacity. And I know I wouldn't have been able to do that if I continued running track.
Yeah. You get to do a little bit of that running thing in a new form. And we will touch, this is a trail running podcast, so we will talk about trail running a little bit at the end. But while we have you with the Paralympics on the brink right now, I think it's really important to kind of dig into what that looks like. Obviously, you guys are, 10 days out or so?
9.
9. Now, somewhere between 9 and 11 days out. And this will come out, I think, again, during, if we do our jobs right, this will come out during the Paralympics,
games.
Which is really exciting.
Okay.
Which is very exciting. So people are listening to this. The Paralympic Games are going on. Mm-hmm. You're competing in para cross-country skiing and para biathlon. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about how that works. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think in the Olympics, it's like there's two very separate teams. In the Paralympics, I feel like for the most part, if you do para skiing, you generally also do para biathlon and vice versa. Is that true in my mind, at least with the U.S. Paralympic team? That seems to be
most nations,
the case. What does that look like?
Yeah, most nations do both cross and biathlon because for a long time they were governed by the same body and the numbers didn't allow for 2 separate sets of competition. They needed athletes to compete in both to fill out the fields. And so probably on our team, there's maybe out of the 13 going, there's maybe 10 who do biathlon and cross, and then 3 or so who just do cross-country skiing. It's very fun because we don't have as many World Cups as the non-para side. And so it's nice to be able to race quite a bit more throughout the seasons. We are governed by separate international bodies now, which makes things way more complex. And so the 2 governing bodies with FIS and IBU, they have to play nice because they know if they were to ever put overlapping competitions, they're going to lose a lot of the field they need to be competitive. And it's really fun to get to see too, biathlon just provides such an interesting element to skate skiing for standing and visually impaired. In cross-country skiing that it shakes up the results. You kind of sometimes get to know who's going to be on the cross-country podium, most likely. People really are consistent and show themselves, but biathlon with shooting adds such a fun element. So at the Paralympics, athletes, you'll see a lot compete in both. We start out with 2 biathlon races. There's one on March 7th. It's the 7.5K sprint, so very similar to the Olympic side in terms of the format. The next day is the 12.5K individual. It has 1 minute added penalties for any missed shots, so no penalty laps. A couple days off, and then the 10th is the classic sprint in cross country, followed up the next day with the classic 10K. And then the following Friday, which is the 13th, we have the sprint pursuit biathlon, which is a new format that's very fun where we do a qualifier in the morning. Based on your results, you go head to head in the afternoon. And it's one of the few head to head races we have because there's so many interval starts where it's you versus the clock. The next day, cross country relay, which is cool because it combines different disabilities and men and women together for a team relay. And the final day is the last cross country event, which is the 20-kilometer skate race. So the longest race on the last day. So you'll see some athletes do probably all 7 over the course of 9 days. So I say it's like our version of the Tour de Ski.
Yeah, totally. And if like for example, in comparison to cross country at the Olympics or biathlon at the Olympics, if those athletes do every race in that one discipline they're racing, yes, it's I think
Hmm.
six cross country
Yeah.
races, and I think it's six on the
Yeah.
biathlon side as well. And it's like on the biathlon side, it's like you have to qualify for the
Hmm.
pursuit, you have to qualify for the mass
Yeah.
start. If you're not on the mixed relay team, you don't get that start
Hmm.
spot. So there's like some elements there. But yeah, I like the putting the longest thing on the last day just to make sure you're nice and tired.
I think that will be a good one to be on the last day because I think it could shake things up quite a bit. I think the results, having it at the beginning, will make it quite different having it at the end. And I'm personally happy about it because I raced really well tired. I'm always doing very well at the end of a race series, whereas I feel like I have to take time to ski into things. So sometimes I don't show up the best, sharpest on day one, too. But I do feel like I show up pretty well at the end when everyone else is getting tired. So we'll see. It would be a really fun one to get a good result in. But also, we haven't gotten too many 20 kilometers. We haven't had one this year. We had one last year, but I had food poisoning. And so that practice of, as you know, taking in feeds and pacing too, anyone who ever does a sport that requires multiple laps, I think we have 5 laps of a 4K, like keeping your pacing on can be really challenging.
Yeah. And then are you guys at Val de Femme or
Mm-hmm.
at On
Val de
Holtz?
Femme.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, Again, for those who are unaware, at the Olympics, biathlon competed at On Holtz, which is like their traditional World Cup venue. And I think they had better weather for the most
Yeah.
part, it looked like. It looked like their courses,
The snow
stability
was
wise,
consistent.
yeah, was very consistent versus Nordic was down in Val de Femme and they had rain and slush
Slush.
and snow and ice and a little bit of everything.
And
So,
it's going to be 50
hope,
degrees this next week. So, yay.
short sleeve skiing. I guess the other question I have for people that are tuning in and watching, one of the more confusing elements of the Paralympics is understanding the categorization
Hmm.
of athletes. Because again, they're trying to create the system in which everyone is
Hmm.
competing, but competing within like so sit skiing versus like
Hmm.
standing skiers, a clear delineation, or visually impaired skiers, a clear delineation. But then within that, you have different like there's like further classification, i.e. many of our sit skiers, some are might have a lower leg or like a lower limb loss,
Hmm.
but some are have a spinal cord
Hmm.
injury, and so they are classified differently, which makes sense due to like what musculature may or may not be affected. How does that work within winter sport classification, just so that we have an idea of what like how this all works on the back end for you guys?
If you're watching, pay attention to on the broadcast, you'll see a percent next to people's names as they show them come through a checkpoint for the time. And this percent indicates their level of impairment. So there are 3 broad categories, as you mentioned, Corinne. It's the standing, the sitting, and the visually impaired. And then within that is the subclassifications, and you're basically go through an appointment where someone tries to quantify how
I was gonna
disabled
say
you
that can't
are.
be problematic at
Yeah,
all.
tries to quantify how disabled you are. And it is, something that is constantly being worked on, improved on. If you're a university, please do research for us. We need more research done to try to make these as clean as possible. And you'll see that percent. So basically, each category has this percent assigned to try to make the results even at the end. So someone with a higher level impairment, so AKA, as plainly as I can say it, more disabled, will have a lower percent. So that means, let's say, you might see in the standing category an 89%. This basically means at the end, their real time, 89% of that will be taken for the result. It comes
Okay.
about a little bit differently in the sprint because that is done based on the qualifiers. So the intervals start and then they actually apply it to start times. So you might see someone start
Cool.
at 0 and then 11 seconds back and then 20 seconds back. And the goal is to get everyone to the finish line based on their impairment around the same time. It's not perfect. There's always going to be, issues and things to work on whenever we as humans try to quantify something that is pretty hard to quantify, especially when you look at visual impairments and different levels of spinal cord injuries or different levels of muscular coordination issues. And it is something though that you're going to want to understand while you're watching, because it will make it a lot more interesting for you to understand. And there's also like strategy behind it. Like, some days that your classification and the percent assigned works better on this type of terrain or this type of snow condition. Like, often higher classifications, as we say, aka less impaired, they do better on really slushy, sloppy snow because they're able to, with whatever power they have in the sit-ski or vision they have, or amount of poles maybe they use in the standing, they're able to push through that greater than someone who's a lower class and requires, they do better maybe in a firmer condition because they're able to utilize that quite a bit better, those different conditions. So there is strategy behind it. It does impact the results, but just pay attention to that percent. And hopefully your broadcasters will do a good job and be able to tell you.
It's that one. I was kind of chuckling all throughout the Olympics of this. Like, I was like, ooh, they've assigned an NBC like handler to our commentating teams. It's like Keegan and Chad and Steve.
Yeah.
It's like they've added someone to the mix who's like the NBC person who can like hopefully keep everyone like steering in the right direction. But sometimes they say things where you're like, no,
Whoa.
like wrong, like stop.
During the Olympics, the person with Keegan and Chad said,
Steve.
Yeah, he said that they had they
have radios in,
and
I said no, they
their
don't.
coaches during the race, and we're like, no, they don't.
This isn't cycling, Steve.
Yeah, it's not
F1.
No.
I know. I was like, I don't know. I would have been like, Steve, shh, no, don't do that. Yeah. So hopefully the commentating teams are well informed and well educated and or have experience in parasports.
Yeah.
That would be like the best case scenario. I guess kind of in that vein, language around parasport is really important. I feel like just knowing you, like I feel like I have gotten better at this over time, but I think they bring up like words like inspirational or overcoming or how broadcasters even frame competition carries real weight and creates a lot of issues. And so I'm curious from your lens as someone who works in the media and who is an athlete and who's going to be competing in the Paralympics, like how do we shift language? How does media and therefore the fans help to shift language that centers performance and professionalism over like this novelty aspect or like this pity aspect? Do you think that's really critical for like the Paralympic success as a movement?
Absolutely. It's something we talk about constantly at Cultured, and I talk about a lot in all my different roles I've held, is basically eliminating, we call it inspiration porn, and it's this concept of people without disabilities using people with disabilities as sources of inspiration in unnecessary ways. Like, of course, if someone has a huge setback and then wins gold, like you would be inspired by that at the Olympics just as you would the Paralympics. But it's more so seemingly like sometimes people with disabilities are framed as inspirational for doing non-inspirational tasks like going to the grocery store or existing. And that's something we're trying to constantly eliminate and keep the focus always on high level performance sport. So it starts even, with the headlines. Like you often see the despite headline. So despite losing his legs in Iraq or despite being born in an orphanage, they went on to win gold. And that's not a despite necessarily scenario. And it's often used as a catch-all to make people feel a certain way and to feel that pity or to feel inspired. But the lens I always try to use is, how would you talk about athletes without disabilities? Just do the same. And always giving athletes the first hand to bring up disability or tragedy, because, someone, let's say they finish their competition, they're so elated, they had such a great result, and then a person interviewing them or media person asking for a quote, brings up like, so when you got into that motorcycle accident, did you ever think you'd be here? You just ruined my great moment of athletic success to bring up the biggest tragedy of my life. Like, that's basically opening a can of worms to potentially ask, when you ask someone about their disability, to ask them about potentially the worst day of their life or a lot of trauma or things that maybe they don't even remember. And so it's really important to always let the athlete drive that conversation, because some of them will. Some of them, it's very essential to that part of their story. They want to talk about it. They want to bring it up. Whereas others, like often for me, for example, like I don't identify with any of those sources of how I feel like is fueling my athletic career. So like, I want to talk to you about how much I trained, or how it was really hard to be bad at something that has nothing to do with disability. It has to do with sports, because at the end of the day, all of these are sports stories. They're athletes. They are elite. They are professional. So keep the focus on that. And that's why it is important that, you know, the media, the commentators, all of them are well versed, because also the sports fans want to understand the sports they're watching. And that's the hardest thing right now about getting parasports fans, is that it can feel confusing. And so if we can try to eliminate any of that confusion, and if anyone has questions about the classifications or questions about what they're watching, please message me, message Cultured. Like, we want to educate best we can. And if we don't know the answer, we'll send you to someone who does, because sports becomes so much more fun to watch when you understand what's happening on the field of play. You understand also the characters behind them. You understand like who's the likely to win because they won the last games, who's the underdog, who's the newbie, all of those things, all of those stories, all of those rivalries that exist in non-parasport also exist here. You probably just haven't gotten to learn them yet. And so trying to follow along however you can is going to make it the best viewing experience for you at home.
I love it. And I think that that segues perfectly into giving Cultured some shine. So you co-founded Cultured, which we're really excited to talk about,
Yay.
to shift how parasport shows up in mainstream culture. And this is like very relevant to parasports. It's very relevant to like Winter Olympic sports too, that I feel like are super niche. Joey Cheek and I talked about this a decade ago, trying to find any information on like speed skating, for example, because there were like the results were nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar with Paralympic sports. How can you create fans if fans can't watch, or if fans can't understand what's happening? So what is Cultured? Why did you start it? Why is it important?
Cultured is a athlete-founded media collective founded by myself and 3 other Paralympic athletes. And we really felt leading into the Paris Paralympics that people weren't paying enough attention to those events leading in. Like, we knew there'd be media and there'd be coverage during the games, but what about all these essential events leading in? Also, what about the sports that aren't at the games? Because there's a lot of elite level sports out there in para that just aren't Paralympic Games sports yet, or maybe they're just not set up to be a game sport. But there wasn't enough coverage on all these other things. So how can we create the coverage and also help the athletes? So, you know, they might not get much practice having a microphone in their face or someone asking for a quote, not like professional sports in the US, where after every game you have access to media and to share, you know, your thoughts, opinions, or voice in major ways. Many of our para athletes will never get that, or get that once every 4 years. So how can we equip them to better tell their stories, feel confident, you know, talking about the sport, the performance? And again, like, they don't have to answer, or they can flip the question if someone is trying to drive home a disability story they don't want to talk about. And it launched right after Paris Paralympics, and we are heading into the games as our first games we will get to cover. And so we're partnering with a ton of cool different organizations, women's sports organizations like Feisty Media, to influencers who did a lot of Olympic coverage. And now we're trying to turn them into doing Paralympic coverage, and athletes as well, and really trying to show a holistic games experience, because we know that the NBC and the Team USA and all these other places will pick up on some of the big name stories. But what about all the other stories that are existing during these games? How can we be a source to fuel that? And I think we saw so many things come out from the Olympics that were not even related to the sports that people loved and grasped onto. And we want to be that place where you can find that knowledge and that info and that insight and become fans of these people. And the more they show up as fans, you know, it can start as simple as following an athlete on social and then that athlete posts about their comp schedule. And hopefully this just has a trickle effect that then, the federations see that there's interest. Maybe we should broadcast one of these World Cups or World Championships, and hopefully it will just have a good effect. And it definitely is very similar, though, to a lot of the Olympic niche sports, because they go through a lot of things that we similarly do, with lack of coverage, lack of broadcasted events outside of the games. And that's why social media, though, is so powerful, is because athletes and sports can get new fans just through a 3-second clip.
Yeah, literally. Like, it's like the entire Skimo sprint could be on Instagram, right? Like, that's kind of insane. I hope for your sake and your teammates' sake, there isn't any sort of like, Sterla type drama that's about to drop that, everyone scandals. No one's going to duet something crazy on Instagram over. So ideally no cheating scandals or like credit card fraud or anything of that nature, just good old fashioned competition. Yeah. I guess in that same vein, though, I'm really curious because you spend a lot of time and energy on this media work, on the advocacy. And while I know that you don't like training, you still have to train and you still have to compete, and you do like competing.
I do like competing.
And so I'm wondering, how do you navigate being both a storyteller but also the story right now?
Oh, great question. Ooh, I think it's helped to scale back on some of my work stuff. But I also think from Cultured, I can put on a lens, like when I'm the one creating content for that channel, of just being a fan. Like, I also want to tune in and watch parasnowboard and the sled hockey games and the alpine races. I am a genuine fan of these things, so I feel like I can easily put on the hat of, I'm a fan right now. I'm not Dani the athlete performing. And I think too, it also helps with insights. Like, I can provide knowledge or insights. Like, I would never take things people told me in confidence and blast it online. But I follow all these athletes already on my own. So it's like, I see this athlete posted his retirement video. Oh, I can get that flipped around really quick, whereas someone else might take a while to even locate that knowledge or stuff like that. And so I feel like the insight's really helpful. And I'm very lucky to have a good team at Culture too, that next week, hopefully I'll be able to scale back a little bit and rely on some other people at the company and an intern who's been amazing to help us with our coverage, to kind of be those ones. Because I think there is so many cool and interesting and funny things that exist in the games that the broader media will never get to see unless athletes are posting it. And we saw that in the Olympics, from all the village insights to the outfits, and people ate that stuff up. Like, people loved it.
Oh, could not stop consuming it. My Instagram time was a little bit high, as I was like, I need more unboxing videos.
Exactly. And so I'm hoping the para athletes also feel empowered through what they witnessed at the Olympics to do that type of stuff. Because, for people who aren't used to maybe existing online or on social media, like, that can feel cringy and awkward and weird to do, but people want it, and it will just help build the athlete's brand and individual platform, and hopefully have a good effect on them, that they can get sponsors and future deals and stuff like that. So I'm hopeful that the para athletes really showcase those behind the scenes these games.
Yeah. Having known some of your teammates, past and present, there's some of them where I'm like, yeah, you can't exactly manage Dan doing like a TikTok dance.
No. That's fine. He doesn't have to be the one.
Dan does not need to do a TikTok dance. That's okay. There are other people who have that skill set. You got to lean into what your skill sets are and what you can bring to the table. I guess I do want to ask a trail question or two, just to like round things out. And I think that it's all kind of in this same parasport vein. Like, the trail and outdoor space, we talk a lot about inclusion, obviously. But from your lived experience, so you dabble in trail running. For those who don't know, Dani, you might have seen her at the Rut or at Broken Arrow, bouncing around at UTMB. I feel like you definitely you got to meet some people at UTMB. There's a really cool initiative going on at Desert Rats by UTMB this spring, which is going to be really, really exciting. But from like your experience, in the sport thus far, like what does real access look like in trail for para athletes that's beyond performative language, that's beyond token visibility, that really is about getting and bringing more para athletes into trail running?
When I first got introduced to trail, I actually got thrown into an Instagram group chat of these endurance para athletes from throughout the world who were just posting about cool things they were doing or races they heard of, opportunities. And through that, I met Zach Friedley, who's a professional trail runner, and an above the knee amputee. And he was really spearheading a lot of efforts. And it was cool to come together with him because he had seen the trail side, and I saw from Paralympics more of an organized sport side, and kind of how even still in Paralympic sport, there's like a missing level of grassroots, but like how could this exist in something that's not in the Paralympics? Somewhat of the organization, everything from accessibility to categorization, putting people in classifications, stuff like that. And so we started working together to try to see what we could do in trail, because I know, especially for him and other athletes with disabilities, they are at a great disadvantage on the trails. They are wearing a prosthetic, they are using a guide, they are even some people using an adaptive piece of equipment. Like, being on these trails is not easy. And so how can we make other people enjoy it and experience it? And when I ran on a trail for the first time as an adult, I'm like, I hiked plenty growing up and in my adulthood, but I never thought to run on the trails that I hiked. And so when I experienced that movement and the beauty of where the trails took me, I wanted more people to be able to experience them, and not just more people who are like me with a very privileged disability where I can access inaccessible spaces and I can enter the race and I can actually compete quite well in the women's field, like without needing a separate category. And Zach and I really worked together. We started working with the Golden Trail Series races here in the States, worked really hard with Mammoth Trail Fest, Broken Arrow. We did some work with UTMB globally to try to help with the adaptive athlete policy. We're working right now with Desert Rats. And really the focus was trying to make sure that people from the disability community felt welcome to the trails and then kept on the trails. And so that starts from everything from the process to signing up online. Is it have accessible tech? Does it have questionnaires to talk about access needs? To then, what is the experience? I think volunteers make a huge part of the race experience. And if they don't know that an athlete maybe has special accommodations or has something they need, that's going to set up the athlete for a poor experience. And there's so many people with disabilities in the world. It's 15% of the world's population. Like, they deserve to be on the trails just like anyone else. And the access piece really has to be driven right now from race directors and hopefully then through brands, because so many people in this community who have gone to experience the trails have had to fight, be uncomfortable, be pushed around, and sometimes even be told they don't belong there. And that's just not the truth. Like, the mountains are for everyone. The mountains are also real, and they won't discriminate, and they won't, change course sometimes. And that's the harsh reality, is we can't make the mountain accessible always, but can we make the start line? And trail running too is so much more than just the athletes who compete on the start line. It's also about the fans or the brands who show up. So it's even looking at minor details from if you're at a ski resort, like looking at, can people who use a wheelchair access to watch their friend at the finish line, or have a parking spot or a restroom? And the details feel really overwhelming, but I think once these race directors see what it would actually take to like make progress, and then it gets implemented, they realize it's good for everyone. Like, it's not just helpful for the disability community, like having a ramp somewhere. Like, these athletes just maybe ran up a mountain, like they don't want to walk stairs either, or like there's just so many little things.
Moms have strollers.
Moms have
there's
strollers.
So many. Yeah.
it's so many things that people think it's only for the disability community, but then when they actually implement it, they're like, oh, this helps everyone. What an idea. And trail running, I think, has a really cool place because it's honestly not governed by like the IOC or IPC. Like there's so much room to play and experiment with like how we can be more inclusive and how we can get more people to the start line. And it's just been one of the biggest joys of my life getting to work with Zach, do this. I work a lot with Run the Rut in Big Sky, Montana, with an inclusivity project through Inclusive Outdoors. And we focus on all marginalized communities, so the queer, BIPOC, and adaptive, and getting to see people come from all over the nation who have never been to the mountains, and they sign up for a trail race, and they are witnessing Lone Peak for the first time, and they're like, I ran up that today? And you're like, yeah, that's what you signed up for, actually. And then the joy they feel for finishing or even just making it to one check mark is so unique, I feel like, to trail. It's something I've never seen in any other sport where the last finisher sometimes is applauded just as much as the first. Like I often don't even see the pro side of trail running. I see all the thousands of other people who sign up, get online right when the race opens, who invest time and money and effort into training and traveling, and just to make it to the finish line. Like it is the greatest experience of humanity I've ever seen is in the trail running world. And it's something I hope everyone who has an interest in mountains, who has an interest in hiking or running in any capacity, whether that's in an adapted piece of equipment or using a guide, whatever it looks like, gets to experience, because it's magical on the mountains. And so I hope more races, and if you are a race director or work with a race and you want to learn about how you can make your race more inclusive with people for disabilities, please message Born to Adapt. We send out and have tons of information on easy steps to first make your race more inclusive, how you can remove some of the barriers to entry for people with disabilities, and then how we can progress this into something where maybe someday there will be categories, and on the podium, there'll be the top men finisher, the top female finisher, the top non-binary finisher, and maybe the top adaptive finisher too. And that's really the hope and goal in that space.
Yeah, and I would say too, if you're an adaptive athlete and you've had, I don't know, you've asked for an accommodation or you didn't know how to ask for an accommodation at a race, reaching out to Born to Adapt is a great way to do that, because I think we've all found that like most race directors, they might not respond right away, or they might say no, but then they can generally be walked in the right direction. And sometimes it just takes a little extra, a nudge or a push. And so I would just say, if you're an athlete who's experienced that,
great call,
that there are resources available to you as well, because the likelihood is that someone else has also come up against that friction, and there's a way to alleviate it for sure. I've got just a couple more questions, like little shorties for you. I say that and we're going to talk for like another 15 minutes, but I guess just like, obviously you're ahead of the games. This will come out during the Paralympic Games, but I'm just wondering, besides obviously medaling and partying with Flava Flav in Vegas, because that's got to be top of the list for post Milano Cortina, but I'm just wondering, you know, what you're looking forward to in this kind of next chapter after this Paralympic Games. What's in the future for Dani?
I'm really excited to hopefully run on trails this summer. I actually haven't signed up for a race yet, but we'll see.
Zach said you're signing up for OCC. Just throwing that out there.
I realized I have a wedding the weekend before and the weekend after, so getting to Chamonix might be a
double header.
Yeah, and it's two weddings, like the best friend and the boyfriend's brother.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those are
non-missable weddings. So I might have to sit out UTMB this year, but hopefully I'll be back next year. So yeah, figuring out what to do for trail. I am really excited. Maybe I'll get to go to Europe. Born to Adapt is working with Run the Alps to help make all of their trips more accessible and accommodating to people with disabilities. And so we've been working really hard with Run the Alps to be able to do this. We worked on a film with them in Chamonix last year, and just really excited to see where that partnership grows and helping more athletes access trail running through something like signing up for a trip. So maybe we'll get to go to Cham and do one of those, but really just kind of waiting to see where life takes me, maybe moving, maybe going back to summer sport, maybe. All I know is I need to decide in the next 5 days, 4 days, if I'm signing up for a road marathon, which is intimidating. And I don't know if I can do it. I mean, I could do it, but can I do it fast enough to hit a elite Boston qualifier for my category, which is something that's really cool. And if para athletes are listening, Boston and some of the other majors actually use the para track and field classification system and offer elite entries, like minimum entry standards, and then elite entry standards as well. So if I hit my elite, I'm an elite at Boston, but I don't know if I can
That'd be
run
dope.
3:17.
Oh, Dani, we got you.
26
I'll
miles.
talk to Nick. You're fine. We got you. We'll talk to Nick. We got this. We got this covered.
I did the 26-mile thing on the road is scary. It's the road that
Yeah,
scares
we'll get you in
me.
some super shoes. You're fine.
I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my
you're gonna,
gosh, my
you're
knee's gonna
fine.
hurt on the road. But yeah, I think,
Dani, she's just like all of us.
I know.
Scared of road
I
running.
am scared of road running. Yeah, when you come from like cross country running and then trail, you're like, road? Owie.
Oh, I still have not done a road marathon, so
Oh,
I can't talk. I was also told that I had to ask you, Zach and I had a little chit chat about the real motivation maybe to get through Milano Cortina Paralympics is that I've heard that there's post-Olympics fondue waiting for you as well.
oh my God. Well, I hope so. I mean, we're kind of in the wrong part of Europe, though. Like Italy. I don't know if I'll get cheese fondue. I mean, I'll make cheese fondue if I get home and I haven't had any. I love cheese fondue. It is my everything in this world in my life. And also a lot of alcohol. Like I will drink a lot of alcohol in the month of April because I can. And I'm not someone who's so tightened up that I don't drink throughout the season. Like we went to Hofbrauhaus in between race competitions. We all had a beer at the Hofbrauhaus, but like I haven't like fully enjoyed. I'm a big cocktail maker, trying to become a wine snob, a beer drinker. And so I think it will be fun to just not train for a month, maybe. Well, if I run the road marathon, I'll have to train and be able to like go get drinks with my friends whenever and however I please.
Yeah, we'll just tell Nick not to listen to this portion of the
Oh,
podcast.
he's
It's totally
fine. He
Just
knows.
a big exhale, a big exhale. Post season is also very good for your well-being and mental
Yes.
health and all that stuff. And then I guess final question, I promise, is we ask everyone this. I think it's kind of a nice little reflection point is what is something that you know now that you wish you could tell your younger self?
This may be cheating, but what your statement was at the beginning. That it's okay. You have
not
to be
cheating.
bad at something to become good at it. You have to be bad and you have to accept that you're going to be bad and it's going to feel embarrassing at times and it's going to feel overwhelming and there's going to feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but everyone has to be bad before they get good. Like even reflecting on this Olympic season, like Klaba was once bad at cross country skiing. Well, maybe not, but probably was. Or
At some point in time, he was likely like mediocre.
Or Courtney Dauwalter was likely mediocre at running one point
She
in
was.
time.
She was not immediate success in ultra running. Like took her a little bit of figuring it out for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's something I wish I could tell myself and everyone else because I think it scares people off so much from trying new things. And there is fun and joy in being bad at something and appreciating you're bad in it and then deciding if you want to become good at it too. Like making that decision that actually I'm going to give this an honest effort, however that looks, and keep going and keep trying to become good someday. So sorry for stealing your answer.
That's okay. We love it. I think I think reflecting on your Paralympic career, that also I think like rings true in a big way, like taking the leap into something that seems maybe impossible and a little bit definitely terrifying. If people want to know more about you, about the Paralympic movement, about Cultured, where can they best find that?
Ooh, well, if you like threads, I'm on threads right now in the
She is on
comments.
threads.
I am on social as the one arm Dan, spelled out, and then Cultured actually has an X between the L and the T. Trademark issue. So Cultured on social platforms too. And I have a podcast right now with FIS talking to other great para athletes in the snow sports space called Hidden Champions. And yeah, also like please message me because I love learning from other people or answering questions about this space. And if you're at a trail race this summer and I'm there, please come say hi to me as well. And if you work with a trail race, go to a trail race, and you don't see any disabled athlete policy, or you think your race could use a little bit of love from the disability community, please send Born to Adapt a message because we'd love to add more races into our fold of how we can help make them more accessible and more welcoming to the disability community.
Awesome. Dani, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
I love
this is
spending
amazing.
time with you. I wish I got to spend more time with you.
If that didn't make you a fan of Dani and the Paralympic movement, I don't know what will. Hopefully, we can all go celebrate her and other Paralympic medalists with a little cheese fondue. And please go check out Born to Adapt. You'll find them over at borntoadapt.org and Cultured. That's CULXTURED. They're going to be over at cultured.com and also over on Instagram. And finally, a huge thank you and shout out to the producing partners of ours over at Feisty Media. Follow them over on Instagram at feisty_media and go over to the website feisty.co to see what they've got cooking up. We'll catch you next week, or until then, we'll see you out on the trails.